Well, look, James, thank you very much for joining us on the Apollo Web podcast today. Today, we're going to go through understanding a bit more about your point of view on the MSP market and, get some ideas around growth and how, anyone who's watching can help learn about growing their MSP. And do you mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, great to see you, Stephen, and thanks for having me on the show. A little bit about me. I'm well and truly in the managed service space. I've been in the business for 23 years when I started a little IT provider called I Know IT. Clearly not a lot of vision back then for growth and scale. Built up a bit of a practice in Sydney, Australia. And today we serve managed service providers with a dependable outsourced help desk.
Oh, beautiful. Nice. So you're quite unique in a way because you're based in Australia, kind of like us in Apollo, based in Australia. Almost your clients are in America. Why is that?
Look, it's kind of a funny story actually. So as I said, we were an MSP. I think we've been going for about 10 years, and we could talk a bit about the ups and downs of that 10-year journey. But we started building an offshore team around about 2012. Before it was cool, it's pretty common now, but everyone thought I was pretty crazy at the time. Built a team and sort of got some scale. The main objective I was looking for was to create some redundancy with my team so that I could focus on sales. And I found in Australia that was very hard to do. Wage rates, as you would know, Stephen, in this part of the world are insane. And so this gave me a bit of a competitive edge at the time. I'm not saying it was easy, but it gave me a competitive edge eventually. And then we started getting knocks on the door from other MSPs in Australia saying, can you help us? Can you just show us what to do? But every time I tried to show an MSP what to do, they didn't want to travel to Southeast Asia, build a whole new team, grind it out, in a whole new environment. So we came up with this idea for Benchmark, which is a fractional help desk for MSPs. And because I'm in Australia, naturally Australians kind of jumped on the bandwagon, but then someone started to talk about it on Reddit. And we got a lot of traction on there. And I guess in terms of a lead ratio for our business, it was 20 times the number of inquiries coming from the United States than there were from Australia. And so we just by virtue, we've ended up being bigger in the US than we have been in Australia.
Wow, okay. So look, obviously today I don't want to talk too much just about Benchmark. It's more around what we're here to do, growing your MSP. And I actually think that would be a good place to even talk about, obviously you primarily work in the US, but do you see much differences between the US clients and your Australian clients from growth perspective or a mindset point of view?
In general, I think we work anywhere in the world, Australia, UK, Canada, US. I think the MSP mindset is the same. I think most MSPs start as technical founders. Maybe you worked in IT. I mean, I never worked in IT before I started an IT company, but lots of people worked in a role and they went, oh, wait, I can just do this myself. But often what's overlooked is the marketing and the sales component of growing a business. It's more than just doing tech work. So I'd say the similarity that I see across the United States and Australia is mindset around a very technical mindset as opposed to a growth mindset. But the difference maybe in the US is I think the US MSPs are more bullish. Definitely we see growth is much more of a priority, I think, for a lot of US MSPs that I talk to. And additionally, it's a much bigger environment. So what's small business in Australia compared to what qualifies as small business in the US are two very different things, as you probably know, Stephen.
So what's a 10x? Yeah. So tell me a little bit, what I'd like to know, and part of the whole reason we're doing this podcast today is to really understand, what are some of the hurdles that you see that a lot of MSPs try and overcome, or they don't even know about? Obviously, they're all working away in their businesses, but what are some of the challenges that you see in working with so many different MSPs?
Yeah. I see a lot of challenges, but they always seem to sort of point back to a few commonalities across MSPs. So the first thing I'll just start with something macro, and that is that the only difference between a high-performing MSP and one that's struggling is sales. We've studied throughout our journey at Benchmark. It's been 10 years now. I've met 2,200 MSPs one-to-one in the last 10 years and had a strategy call with them. And I've looked at the data. So I've looked at, what's your size? How long have you been in business? How many staff do you have? Like, we look at all of these data points in order to see where we can help. And the one thing that just stands out is a lack of a sales engine for the smaller MSPs and a bigger sales engine for bigger MSPs. And I think that that's very telling because, again, as we just spoke about a few moments ago, often we start out as technical founders. We're really fascinated by IT. We're really into that. But the mechanics of actually getting out there and growing a business is very different to technology. And it involves being out there, somewhat maybe a little bit extroverted, getting in front of people, which is not always a comfort zone for a lot of MSP owners. Then what I see is that some say, okay, I'm ready to step away from the computer and I'm ready to go out and get sales. But because all of the solutions that you've been looking for previously are all inside the computer, there's a tendency to try to do things from behind the keyboard as opposed to getting out and meeting people one-to-one, having conversations, building up a bit of a book of contacts and getting out and selling to them. So it's like an entirely new skill set that needs to be developed. And often that is very difficult for a lot of small MSP business owners.
Do you see, because one thing that I tell everyone is that most MSPs out there are selling the same shit as everyone else, right? They've got the same solution stack. It's quite generic. There's the TSP movement where they're going down more the bespoke approach. But do you see that as a hindrance as well? Just like offering because IT support, which a lot of MSPs do. Because do you see that as another hindrance?
I think commoditization is a huge problem in our industry. We all everyone just goes to Reddit or the tech tribe and says, how much do you charge for this? And then that just becomes like the price across the market. And so customers really struggle to distinguish between MSP A and MSP B because they're not really selling them anything new. So it becomes a price game. And the danger of a price game is that it's just a race to the bottom. And so it's important to have a minimum viable stack. I was actually commenting on Reddit the other day because someone was asking, what do I sell? And it's like, well, you have to sell a minimum viable stack in order to protect the customer from a breach. That's really what it effectively comes down to. But then from there, I think you can get a little bit more creative. Like there's so many things happening in AI right now. So having a conversation about AI instead of having a conversation about IT support tends to tick more boxes these days because companies need to be moving in that direction. So I think, without sort of having any bias towards any particular platform, Copilot is a kind of a natural direction that I think MSPs should be discussing with their clients. And if a client's not into that, maybe finding some other tool that you're comfortable with and adding it into your stack that the client can use. Yeah,
okay. Do you see a difference between the type of MSPs who have a bench, they might have professional services, and the ones who don't really have a bench, that don't do the consulting side? Do you work with, the hybrids of MSPs that have a bit of both, or the ones that are pretty much 100% MSP? Do you see a difference in their strategies or their outcomes?
Do you mean in terms of like blending sort of professional services with help desk work? Is that?
Yeah. With some like clients, we see a lot of clients come through that just want to do sort of help desk and have a little bit of a bench, or others that go out there and they push, project services, and they make that as almost like their lead gen to get into their managed services. Have you seen much difference in those types of MSPs?
I think when I see larger MSPs that are really growth focused MSPs, everything starts with a project. So having an inroad. So if you were marketing, for example, marketing IT support, unless someone's got, a real problem with their IT support provider, it's really not a selling point. Most customers kind of want to avoid paying for IT support as much as humanly possible. So, but if you're, say, marketing, we talked about AI, if you're marketing AI enablement services, then you'll get some leads from that, and that can be an inroad into selling managed services. Or phone systems, internet systems, cloud systems can often be like the trigger point. That's what the customer wants, and then you can use that to kind of edge your way in to a contract. So I think having a dedicated pro-serve group is important. I'll give you the other side of that. When you're not good at projects and you're blending your resources together, that is the number one reason a customer will leave you is a failed project. You could be absolutely amazing at support, but then you get distracted by this project. It's not executed well. That is the number one reason why a company will transition from your MSP to another MSP.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So if you were to do it again, like if you were to start an MSP and it was the perfect world without giving away all the secret sauce, what would you do? Like, how would you augment your MSP?
First of all, I don't have any secret sauce. I'm happy to share everything. But there's so many things. First of all, the one thing I want to tell every startup MSP is this is a marathon, not a race. I constantly see MSPs start and go, oh, I've got to get to, I've got to get some customers. And that's a natural thing to think, but often it's misunderstood how long it takes to build a brand and a reputation in the market. It still very much is a professional services firm, like an accounting firm, a law firm, a financial services firm, where it takes a long time for people to get to know you and get to know your brand. So putting yourself out there as a personal brand would be the first thing that I would focus on, and understand that this is a long journey. We talked just before the show. An average MSP might spend about 10 years getting to $1 million, which sounds like a long time, but is actually a fact. That's the reality. And to get there, you need to be putting yourself out there, going to networking meetings, joining organizations that are going to help promote your business for you, and to give you a stage to promote your business. So that would be my first bit of advice: is plan for the long term. This is not a business where you're just going to sell 1 million units or something overnight. So many other things. I would get sales training. So it's funny, we get to meet MSPs when they're 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and they work with Benchmark. We provide their help desk service to them. So they now got all this free time. And then the next thing we recognize is they don't have the sales skills. They haven't been doing selling. If I had my time over again, I would probably go and do some sales training early on. Anything like Sandler, for example, just has a fundamental sales training program that I've put a few of our partners through, for example. Just get up to speed on methodology around sales, because there is nothing worse than putting yourself out there and just not closing any deals because you don't follow a basic sales framework to get deals done.
Yeah. We see that a lot. Yeah. We get some of our clients get the same leads, and some of them, because the leads aren't good enough, and the others go, that was a great lead, I closed that one. It's just that process and knowing how to handle them, and even the follow-up process.
Yeah, it's amazing that we're systems people, like IT people. We're all about systems and processes and redundancy and this and that, and making sure that there's a methodology to do something. But sales is kind of like at a loss for a lot of people because they just haven't, just had the training. I think, a couple of weeks training with a good sales trainer will change your life. Yeah. And then my last thing would be, and I mean, I know this sounds super obvious, but you got to hire better people. I think the number of MSPs that I meet, and just so everyone in your audience knows, a good fit partner for us is usually somewhere between 500,000 in revenue and 2.5 million in revenue. And it's the struggle stage. And why is it a struggle stage? One leader, few helpers, right? And so what I think is the quicker that you can get people actually accountable and responsible for different aspects of your business, the more that you'll be able to get out there and focus on sales, focus on scale. I hired too low, too cheap, had staff turnover, had all of these challenges. And, these days, we've got quite a lot of people in the company. I'm always looking for the best possible person that I can find to fit that role that will actually take the load off my shoulders entirely. And you notice I haven't mentioned outsourcing because I'm not trying to push it, but there are elements of outsourcing that can work really well. I mean, most of us don't think about outsourcing our accounting. We don't think about outsourcing our bookkeeping. It's just a natural thing to do. We don't want to get amazing at that. But a lot of MSPs try to do everything internally, and I think outsourcing can really accelerate your journey there. If I could have found a partner 20 years ago, my business would be 10 times the size, easily.
Ah, that's great. I also, going back to what you're talking about, hiring the right people, it almost sounds like you're an advocate for things like EOS should probably talk to
Yeah.
them about that. So do you have like a framework? Do you use like the EOS? Was that the sort of framework you would recommend, or?
We use a combination of frameworks, it's probably fair to say. I was brought up on the Verne Harnish, scaling up, mastering the Rockefeller habits kind of approach. And then I think, if I understand correctly, Gino Wickman was part of that and then went off and started EOS. And so I draw from some of the content from EOS. We've mostly based on the scaling up methodology. As far as people, man, I think defining the behaviors that you really need are so important. More recently, we've been using AI to do that. I'll give you an example. I had AI interview me about my values. So I created a prompt in ChatGPT. And what was really interesting about that is it wasn't the values that are sort of printed up on the wall. Like, we've got values like raise the benchmark and success through collaboration. These are really important team values. But what are my values when it comes to like hiring a human, and what do I want to what I want from them? And it was really interesting. So I got it to come up with these values, and mine were like, just getting things done, picking up the phone, not waiting for someone to get back to you, chasing people down. Those were my core values. And then I actually took it to our general manager. I gave her the same prompt, and what she wanted out of someone was different to me. And this is a really important thing, because like, whilst I might recruit someone, they're also going to be managed by someone else, and they're going to be working with a whole bunch of people. So what we realized is we had to get clear on what the behaviors are and what the values and characteristics are that we're looking for. So eventually, once Jazz, my GM, did that and I did mine, we actually had AI help us combine it and come up with 5 attributes that were really important to us. And then we created interview questions based on that. And then we interviewed, and then we had AI help us determine who the best candidate would be for it. So I know that's going a little bit further than what you asked about frameworks, but for me, it all starts with like really having a good, deep, hard think about what you want and what you want from this individual, and then using interview questions to determine if they're a good fit for your company.
One of my thoughts is, if you actually hire the right people, you probably don't need these frameworks as much as well, because they do exactly what you want them to do, right?
Yeah.
As long as you have the right processes in place. Okay. We talked a little bit about like the data and some of the things early on before we started. What are some of the things that you're seeing in the market right now? Is there anything that, like, an MSP who might be at that $2 million wall and wants to break to get to $10 million, or even $500,000 that wants to break into the $2 million that we should be identifying?
So many things. So, and there's a big difference between the half and the 2.5. So the half usually does the $500,000 MSP, probably using some contractors, maybe has one full-time person, is still very much in the engineering team, is still dealing with escalations, is still getting calls on their cell phone every day. And my advice for them is we've got to free up the distraction. And again, there are different ways to do that. One might be to use outsourcing. And again, I'm not going to try to plug it, but that is one option, right? Is to free up your time by utilizing a third party that can execute for you. And the other one is, and everyone hates me when I say this, but find more time, right? So you need leads and you need sales. And when I was in that stage of business, I realized I was never going to be able to focus on marketing and sales during the day, because as soon as 8 a.m. rolled around, back then I used ConnectWise. I'd log into ConnectWise and there'd be a queue full of tickets, and I'd be trying to get work done, distribute work. And before I knew it, I turned around and the day was over and sales just took a back seat. I realized I was never going to fix that at that size. I always had to be in delivery. So I started getting up at 5 a.m. and I'd go onto LinkedIn at 5 a.m. and I would connect with as many people as I could. And I would just suggest a coffee, 15-minute coffee, over and over again. Don't ask me what my hit rate was. It was 10 or 12 years ago, but here I am, right? So it's find the time. And I think sometimes when you're a small business and you've come out of the corporate world, there's this hope that there's this like kind of work-life, 4-hour work week balance, all the stuff that gets sold to you by the influencers. It's not true. I've never found that to be true. I've found that your factory hours don't work. You're going to need to grind to get to this sort of minimum viable. $1 million is kind of where I see as a minimum benchmark. And then from there, we kind of got to grow 2, 3, 5, and so So that's at that end of the spectrum. For the 2 million-ish size business, leader helpers, not leader. And so we're not seeing them make enough investment in key roles. So the key role would be a service delivery manager, a good solid tier 3 technician. That frees up that business owner to go and focus. So I meet a lot of overwhelmed business owners that say, I don't know what's going on. Like I've got 5, 6, 7 people and I'm still in the mix every day. I'm still getting calls on my cell phone. And it's usually due to people challenges. And it's because those folk are not fully 100% accountable for each function in the business.
Yeah, okay. It is really hard when you're trying to get to that scale of the business. You know, I know myself growing a business, you want the right person in the right job, right? And doing that.
Yeah.
If you can't, then you got people doing too many roles. And I'd say that's actually one of the hardest things as well. Is trying to figure out like who do you actually even need in those roles, the right type of person in that role. And then if you have to let someone go because they haven't worked out, how do you fill that in? And there's that you have what do you call the law of attraction, and you also have the opposite of it as well, where people scarcity mindset. Do you think that sort of mindset could come into play here?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So I think the scarcity mindset is really common. I literally just spoke to a guy this morning, and he was 20 miles out of Austin, Texas, and he told me that in the region there was like 7 million people. And he told me there's not enough work. And it's like, but yet we've got a partner in Austin and they're doing 8 million in revenue. So there's clearly enough work. And I think the scarcity mindset, maybe you tell us a different way. Somehow you were good at sales at the start. Otherwise we wouldn't be talking. Somehow you had to win some business. So what tends to happen is when you start a business, you've got capacity and you're hungry. So you're able to win clients. And then you get a little bit along the way and you maybe get distracted by all the work. So now you have capacity. Now you have no capacity, right? Yeah. So you then think, I got to get some help. And then as you get that help, now you've got to sell capacity because now you've got another resource. And then you go, I'm not good at sales. What do you mean you're not good at sales? You got sales at the start. What do you mean you're not good at sales? Just your focus has changed. And I think that scarcity mindset can set in as a result of that. Oh man, all I do is pay bills and there's no one's knocking my door down. And of course you would know, Stephen, no one will knock your door down unless you market. You've got to get content out there. You've got to run lead generation campaigns in order to find that work. And so I do like to, whenever someone tells me there's not enough work, I Google the metro area nearest to them and tell them how many businesses there are and say, seriously, there must be 1 million computers within a 20-mile radius of you. Like there must be 1 million computers sitting on desks that need some level of IT service. Yeah.
I tell you what, like some of our clients, most successful clients are in the middle of nowhere. They've got local offices in the middle of nowhere. Like I can't tell you the name, but we've got one recent client and I asked my general manager, well, why is he getting so many leads? And she said, it's because there's nobody there. Yeah. This is absolutely outrageous. He's got like 4 or 5 offices spread throughout the country in just random spots. And, it's that mindset of, the law of attraction, I think that, I honestly think that is part of the issue as well, because no offense to the industry, but a lot of the people here are techies, right? So they kind of introverted, they like to think a lot, so that, and then their heads a lot. And, getting out there is what you've just identified is really true about getting out there, joining these groups and getting people to know, like, and trust you. We see it a lot. We get a lot of MSPs come to us and they're like, hey, can you just set this thing up? And I want it to work in 6 months, And it's like, hold on a second. You've had a business for 10 years and it's taken you 10 years to get to this very point, and you think it's going to take 6 months to get double your, start bidding to that size. You should be doing it 10 years ago. This should be part of your entire process. It'd be 3 times the size, but there's no better time to start than now. But it's, I find it a really interesting industry and some very unique people in it as well. And, you see some of our clients do outrageously good. I'm not going to name names, but the ones who have the brands are the ones that we look and go, wow, he's done really well. You've been plugging away at this for 10 years plus, and you see the value in that brand, and the leads just come naturally to you. Whereas some of the ones who've been sitting there, they might have been trying this, that, this, and that, and they can't quite figure out that mix. I just put them into our best top clients and say, look at that, look what they've done. And then they go, wow, that's where the results you start to see.
I think point that trust runs deep. And so I talked about MSPs that are in the middle of nowhere. We've seen this as well. Some of the most successful MSPs we know are in places that I've never heard of. I look at it on a map and there's like a freeway running through it, and that's about it. And I go, how are they so big? But trust runs deep. So they've got a captive audience. Localization makes you do things probably above and beyond what you might do in a big city market where it's very commoditized, it's very aggressive, it's very price driven. Very regional, local areas, they tend to have a captive audience. And some of them I've seen, whenever a competitor pops up, they just buy them. So that way they just end up being the only game in town. But again, I don't see that in year 1 to 5. I see that in year 10, 20, 30. This is a long game. This is professional services. And so sure, you can have some wins along the way and you can see some growth. But the real growth happens as people start to realize you're in this for the long haul, and they've seen you around, they've seen you at events, they've seen your banner up at the local soccer game, whatever, but they've seen you consistently for a really long time, and then the trust is built, and then they'll do business with you.
Yeah. I mean, it blows my mind. We've got a few clients in the Carolinas, in North America, and as you know, that's quite, the towns and cities are spread far apart, and there's very few people there, but they're big MSPs, and almost in the middle of nowhere. It's, considering some of what we're used to here in Australia, cities of 5-7 million people, they'll have 5-7 million people spread across the entire state. It's, blows my mind sometimes. Yeah, excellent. Well, James, is there anything, I mean, we've got a few other things that we could be talking about today from a growth mindset point of view. Obviously, we've got the whole outsourcing. We could plug away at Benchmark 365, but sure. I think there's some valuable things that are going on right now from like a go-to-market strategy. What are you seeing in the market from your more successful MSPs? Have you seen, we talk about AI, data, very technical sort of stuff, but have you seen something that's really working with your clients at the moment?
Yeah, it's almost the opposite. I think the KISS principle applies. Keep it simple, stupid. The most successful MSPs I know have one product, their stack, which is, it might be their RMM, their EDR, their anti-phishing, their cyber awareness training, and their DNS filtering, bundled into a single monthly price that's very easy to communicate to the customer that they're going to be dependable and they're going to take care of their IT. Those companies tend to scale really, really well because they can repeatedly sell the same thing over and over again. The ones that we see that struggle get very, very, very technical. So they're dealing with data centers, complex servers, complex networks. I'm not saying you can't be successful doing that. There's obviously, there are a lot of companies that are, but the ones that we see are scaling faster with customer acquisition, have a very simple menu for the customer to buy from. And again, it's based on trust. It's not cold outreach. It's based on building up a network over time and then having a very simple solution for the customer at a fixed monthly cost. So they're the businesses that we see scaling the most from within our network. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Excellent. All right. Well, James, we've gone through a lot of stuff today. Is there anything that you would like to anyone watching or listening to take away from our discussion today?
Yeah, the number one difference between a hyper successful MSP and one that's not is sales. The quickest way to get sales is to focus on removing distraction. So if that distraction for you is projects, find out a way that you can streamline projects, use a partner, hire someone that's going to be accountable for it, whatever it might be. Help desk is the most distracting aspect of an MSP because it's reactive, it's transactional. So again, build a lot of resource into that or utilize an outsourcing provider to help you with it and get around other people that have a growth mindset. So if you can join a peer group, we have Benchmark Peers as a sales accountability group that runs on a monthly basis. I know there's tons of peer groups out there. So don't do it alone. Everything in business has already been solved. Literally every business problem has already been solved. The thing is that it's just in your imagination, but it's in someone else's reality. Find that person that it is their reality and ask them how they did it. the best way to do that is through peer groups.
Beautiful. I do have to say, as a parting comment, one of the things I have realized about this industry is one of the only industries I've ever been part of or know of with so much support, so many people coming together with that same problem. They have a problem. It's a really similar problem, and it's kind of like how you scale that, and people like you in the market, I think it's great what you're doing and helping out.
Thanks.
So thank you very much for joining me today, and looking forward to next steps.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. Good to see you.